Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my friends. How you doing? It's your friend Phil here, project management trainer and coach. And today I'm going to be talking to you very briefly about how to concentrate your time in the right place for the PMP exam. You know, there's so much stuff to study that you have to apportion your time smartly. You don't want to spend so much time on stuff that doesn't count or that doesn't matter as much. So I want to encourage you to download a copy of the PMP exam handbook and take a look at the exam breakdown. At the same time, I'd like to encourage you to download a copy of the PMP exam content outline. Download a copy and read it. And immediately you realize that majority of the exam is from where you have the least processes. I've spoken about this quite a few times, but I know some folks haven't quite gotten it. I'm going to talk about how to slice and dice the PMP guide and where to sink your teeth into across the knowledge areas and down the process groups. So you probably realize executing is the biggest area on the exam by way of the process groups. But do you know where the biggest concentration is by knowledge area? Think about it. You might have heard me speaking about this before, or maybe you figured it out yourself. But the biggest knowledge area is not schedule management. It's not risk management. It's not cost management with all the crazy earned value formulas. So why do people spend all their time on cost management and earned value type stuff when that is not the biggest area on the exam? Why do people spend time in network diagrams and forward passes, backward passes, ADM, and all sorts of crazy stuff that PMI has long forgotten? I'm not talking about network diagrams in general. I'm just talking about things like ADM. Some people say, Phil, but why do we have dummies? And some people make it their lifelong ambition to find out why they are dummies, arguing about dummies. Don't be a dummy arguing about dummies. Leave dummies alone for the dummies and move on. Because these things are very likely to not bother you one bit on the exam. You know, some people have a hard time wondering why does ADM only have finish to start. Don't make that your priority. What you do need to make your priority is the big ticket stuff I'm about to tell you. So executing right off the bat, boom, first process, direct and manage project work. You need to be all over this like white on rice. You need to know this stuff in your sleep. You need to be the orchestrator of direct and manage project work such that you know every single input, every single tool and technique, and every single output. And you can explain them in your own words. Now, I don't know every single one, but if I was getting ready for the exam, you betcha I would. So you got to know the three major outputs of that thing. You got to know one of the major tools and techniques that doesn't appear everywhere else, maybe appears one or two places. And then you also need to know the core inputs. And a lot of folks forget these core inputs. So there are three big ticket outputs: your deliverables, your WPD, and your issue log. And then your major tool and technique of interest. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's the major one of interest because it doesn't appear everywhere. I'm talking about PMIS. So you need to know what the PMIS is and get comfortable with it. And understand that in some way you could look at that as one of your EEFs. Anyway, after you've done studying the direct and manage project work process, you move to the next one. So there's nothing in scope, nothing in schedule, nothing in cost. You hit quality. Hit that bad boy hard. Know what's in it. Know what managed quality is all about. Get comfortable with managed quality. Understand the flows from control quality back into managed quality. Understand process analysis, and the reason for process analysis being one of the techniques you use. Understand the process. It's not just giving customers confidence that quality standards are being met, it's improving the process. It's also orchestrating how are we going to report on quality. You know, we've also got design for X, designing for the most important variables. So understanding this process is very important, which takes us to resource management and the terrible three, the ADM, acquire, develop, manage. Acquire resources, develop team, manage team. This is stuff you need to be all over, because this is what executing is made of. See? So acquiring resources, developing the team, managing the team, the tools and techniques used to do that. This stuff is so important. Understanding the play on interpersonal skills and how you would develop the team with the 5 stages of team development in mind. Understanding where the team is likely to have a big blowout, all that stuff. This is what you should be focusing on. The softer side, the softer parts of project management. A lot of people don't, but I want to encourage you to. You need to know this stuff for your exam. It's not going to be all technical stuff. Technical is going to have its place, but when it comes to the soft side of project management, the ADM, negotiating, MCDA, the place of MCDA as you acquire your resources, there is so much to be covered in ADM. Conflict resolution, understanding the subtleties in conflict resolution, understanding that stuff is very, very key for your exam. So after you're done with ADM, and mind you, there's a ton of stuff, you know, understanding EEFs, that they actually updated at the end of develop team and updated at the end of manage team. It's so important to know this stuff, folks. All right? When you're done with all that stuff is under your belt and you feel like you know it sufficiently well, in my mind, the next stage that you should pursue is weaving all of the processes across resource management together and delineating one from another, because it's easy to mix up manage resources with control resources, manage team, I beg your pardon, with control resources. They are very different, and mixing up acquire resources with estimate activity resources. These things are all very different. All right, so you need to be able to delineate one resource management process from another. ADM, it gets people in a tailspin a lot. So definitely focus on delineating one piece from the other. I can't overstate it. All right, now when that stuff is all done, you move into the next area. And this is another one people get mixed up, manage communications. And people mix up manage communications with manage stakeholder engagement, because they're both communication intensive. Although managed communications is communicating with an intent to share information as planned, whereas managed stakeholder engagement is communicating with an intent to engage stakeholders as planned in your stakeholder engagement plan. So there's a lot of tiny little subtleties you need to get straight in executing. And it's these tiny little differences that get people mixed up on the exam. You could be answering a stakeholder engagement question, but it sounds so much like communicating that you're looking at it with the wrong pair of eyes. You see, you don't want that to happen to you. You want to know exactly what is what, you know, as you tackle these questions on the exam. So anyway, that's pretty much it for communications. Going down to the next one, we got risk management. So implement risk responses. Again, it's understanding the difference between planning the response versus implementing the response. Also very important to do. Communications has conduct procurement. I beg your pardon. Procurement has conduct procurement. That is a very loaded process as well. You see, this is why people get these questions wrong, because conduct procurement, you do so many things there. One, You are sending out RFPs, RFQs, RFIs. Some people think that you did it in the previous process. No, no, no. This is where you're doing the advertising. This is where you're doing the sending out of stuff. This is where you're having the bidder conferences. This is where you're answering questions to get the bidders straight. This is where you are negotiating. This is where you're receiving proposals back and doing more negotiating, whichever order those come in. This is where you will ultimately award a contract. There is a ton of stuff that happens in conduct procurement. And last but not least, in manage stakeholder engagement, there is also a lot of stuff that happens. You are communicating, you are being active. This is where the project manager gets up from behind the desk and engages people, engages stakeholders to get that necessary traction. So this is where your stakeholder engagement assessment matrix becomes a focal point for you to move people from one place to the other. But you need your stakeholder engagement assessment matrix in your stakeholder management or engagement plan, I beg your pardon, which is inside your project management plan. So there is so much stuff to be aware of and to be thinking about when you tackle executing. You know, it's like a loaded gun. There is so much stuff in it that is unbelievable, the power in executing. And it's a small wonder, because this is where a majority of the money is spent. This is where a lot of the salaries, you know, are paid. People are working around the clock. Executing is very important. And if you look at page 555 in the PMP guide, you realize that this is like where a lot of stuff happens. You know, a lot of stuff happens in executing. Anyway, that's part 1, okay? In part 2, as soon as I get done with what I'm here to do, I'm here to do some business. But as soon as I get out of this place, I am going to be sharing with you the most important knowledge area for your studying and why. All right, so give me a few minutes and I'll see you when I come back. All right, bye for now.